Hello everyone, I hope you're keeping well. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Dylan and I'm one of the two tutorial officers at Fitz College. One of the areas in which I assist students with is when it comes to exams and specifically exam access arrangements. So basically this is a small PowerPoint crash course to explain to students how to access the reasonable adjustments that they need in order to sit their exams to the best of their ability, regardless of their personal circumstances. With the main kind of Easter period approaching, we thought it'd be best just to kind of go over the basics, and then if you have any other questions you can email me or come and see me at my office in the Student Services Hub. So we'll just basically begin and just go through step by step, and hopefully you'll find this presentation helpful. So the very first slide is basically to explain what are exam access arrangements. It's important to point out before we go any further that exam access arrangements, or EAAs as we refer to them, and reasonable adjustments are pretty much the same thing. Reasonable adjustments just refer to specific exam arrangements such as rest breaks or extra time, whereas exam access arrangements kind of refers to the whole package. So basically the application that we send to the exams team which contains the requested reasonable adjustments. So EAAs are basically pre-examination arrangements which allow students to fairly sit their assessments and exams and removes any potential barriers without changing the demands of the exam. Basically we use supporting documentation provided by students directly, such as GP letters, or more commonly student support documents, which we'll get into later. And this basically lists the reasonable adjustments that a student might need, and it helps students with special educational needs, disabilities, illnesses, injury, or adverse personal circumstances to sit their exams, and basically levels the playing field to help them succeed to the best of their ability. It is the responsibility of the tutorial office, normally me, to apply for reasonable adjustments as early as possible. So the window this year for reasonable adjustment applications opened in January. So I've been going through the list of students who require reasonable adjustments, and I've been applying for them basically since then, and I'm carrying on now until the deadline in March. So once we have the information about what adjustments you'll be needing, you don't need to really do anything. It's our responsibility, and please feel free to check in if you'd like to know the progress of your application. So when it comes to exam access arrangements and reasonable adjustments, one department at the university that you might come across and probably should come across is the Accessibility and Disability Resources Centre, otherwise known as the ADRC, or the Disability Services for short. So it's basically the job of the ADRC to provide confidential and accessible advice to students regarding potential access arrangements, and basically identifying barriers that students might face while they're at university, make recommendations to remove these disadvantages, whether this is in exams or in other kind of aspects of your academic and lives at university. This could also kind of cross into accommodation. So it's basically to work with the departments and people you might encounter across your academic career and ensure that you have the provisions in place that will allow you to enjoy your time here and thrive, really. Obviously, when it comes to kind of my area, this will mostly refer to exams, wherein the ADRC use their expertise to provide recommendations regarding what reasonable adjustments students should have. So whilst the tutorial office doesn't work directly with the ADRC, we can reach out to them regarding specific student cases if we need clarification regarding student support documents. Basically they provide the information that we need to ensure that students have the reasonable adjustments for their exams. So they're very important, and we recommend reaching out to them. So one of the main functions of the ADRC is to produce student support documents, otherwise known as SSDs. Some of you might already have these, some of you might not, but this is just basically to clarify what they are and if you think you can benefit from them. So basically they're official reports produced by the ADRC which contain information about a student's disability, illnesses, adverse personal circumstances, and the effect this may have on their study. This basically can be provided to a number of people you might encounter while you're at university. This includes tutors and directors of studies, in our case a tutorial office. This will allow us to kind of view obviously kind of sensitive information, but kind of see the reasonable adjustments that have been recommended and allow us to apply for them when you sit your exams. So it's important to note that unlike other forms of medical documentation, such as GP letters, SSDs don't need to be updated each academic year. They're basically in place for the entirety of your academic career. If your personal circumstances change, you can have them updated, and this will allow us to kind of make sure that you have the most up-to-date access arrangements in place. GP letters are important as well. For example, if you incur an illness kind of late in the day when it comes to kind of applying for exam arrangements, it's very important though that if you kind of use a GP letter as medical evidence, that it needs to contain specific requests for adjustments. But each year, due to the nature of such letters, we request that they are updated. So the time taken to create an SSD can vary depending on each student's specific support needs. I spoke to someone at the ADRC before I put this presentation together to kind of get a rough idea. So if they have all the information that's required, this could be kind of quite quickly. You know, the student kind of fills in the information and provides the documentation necessary. The ADRC make the recommendations, the student approves it, and then it's kind of sent out to the people that the student might encounter, the tutorial office included. So yeah, but otherwise, if the information that is needed by the ADRC is not kind of present, or if there's any kind of problems with the approval process by the student, then this can take longer. I don't have a specific time frame, unfortunately. However, it's probably important to note that the sooner you look into getting an SSD created, the better. I think you can look into it before you actually start at Fitz and at Cambridge more broadly. So obviously most of you watching this are already here, so that's not really applicable anymore, but you can basically reach out to them at any point in the year and they will look into it. As with any department, they have their busy times and less busy times, but you know, probably at the start of Michaelmas term of an academic year, that's probably best when to look into it, and probably progress will move quite quickly. And yeah, so once an SSD is put together, it's basically made available to anyone who the student gives permission to see it, and in my case, normally the tutorial office, which will allow us to apply for exam access arrangements. So as mentioned on the previous slide, the SSD application process can vary in time frame depending on the specific student case. This also can obviously be impacted by how long it takes to get hold of supported medical documentation and the student approval process. If the student wants anything in the SSD amended, then the ADRC will make those changes, but obviously that might delay the process. But it is very important that the recommendations within there are suited to your needs. So yeah, we would recommend kind of looking into an SSD as early as possible, and you can complete the student information form on the ADRC website, and it just basically asks for an overview of your condition, illnesses or disabilities, and will allow you to provide the supporting documentation, and will basically send the information to an advisor who will then kind of be your main point of contact at the ADRC when it comes to your student support document. So yeah, it just really gets the ball rolling. And we would recommend probably doing this in Michaelmas term of each academic year, as this is probably the least busiest time. So it's important to note as well that disability is a very broad term, and so when it comes to departments such as the ADRC, which contain disability within their title, it's important to kind of make clear what is really meant by disability. Some of you might already be aware of the broadness of the term, especially those of you who have disabilities. But yeah, it's incredibly broad, and you shouldn't feel dissuaded from reaching out to the ADRC if you don't feel that you fit within a kind of conceptual framework of disability. Disabilities come in kind of all shapes and forms and affect people in different ways. Physical and mental, but also I would say that the ADRC and SSDs kind of go beyond disability to look into adverse personal circumstances, so we would definitely recommend reaching out. The standard that the university uses when it comes to disability is the Equality Act, and it's defined as a physical or mental impairment which has a substantial and long-term adverse effect on a person's ability to carry out normal day-to-day activities. So as previously said, that definition is relatively broad. However, it's important to note that it covers lots of conditions that you might otherwise not think that you fit into. So I would strongly advise you to please look into it. Yeah, it can only be beneficial to your experience while you're at university. So the definition covers people who currently have a disability and people who have previously had a disability. The example that I've used on the slide is people with epilepsy. it's a disability, but you might not be suffering from it at present. But you could suffer from an epileptic attack in the future. So it's kind of like on the books, even if you're not suffering from it. Another example might be someone with a mental condition such as OCD or anxiety. So they may be receiving medication and treatment for those conditions in order to mitigate the effects. However, obviously, change, different circumstances, exams, coursework stress can all aggravate those kind of mental conditions, and so obviously it's important that the ADRC and the college and your tutors and director of studies are aware that that those disabilities could impact you differently at different times. And it's also worth noting that you're not alone. So 20% of current undergraduates at the Cambridge University are have some form of disability. So there's lots of people who are in the same boat as you, and that's why organisations and departments such as the ADRC and the exams team really exist. It's really to help students of all abilities to access their examinations. So please don't feel dissuaded from reaching out if you think you might have a disability or that your experience or exams might be impacted by your current situation. So at this point in the presentation, it might be worth looking at a list of the most common reasonable adjustments. It's important to note that, depending on the individual student, a student might have one, two, a few, and many of these. There's not really a limit, as far as I'm aware, as to how many you can have. But it's also important to know that just because you have a reasonable adjustment listed on your SSD doesn't mean that you have to use it. It's optional, and we would normally contact students at the beginning of each academic year to confirm which they would like to use. So probably the most common that we see are extra time and rest breaks. These kind of go hand in hand. 25% is the UK standard, which is 15 minutes an hour, and I would say 10-minute rest breaks are the most common. The use of a PC or word processor is becoming increasingly common. This basically allows you to type your exam where otherwise it would be handwritten. This is increasingly common just due to the nature of exams in general, but also in a post-COVID world. For students who have specific kind of medication needs, we can also apply for them to bring medication, food, drink into exams, thus allowing them to kind of remain in a venue when otherwise they might have to leave to kind of see to medical needs. Ergonomic equipment as well is something that can be facilitated, although in that specific instance we would have to situate a student in college, as the university cannot ensure that each student who would require such equipment would have that in place. So there's also non-Bluetooth headphones on there. So those are kind of the big bulky ones that kind of sit over your head completely, which can be used to kind of reduce background noise. It is worth noting though that all students are entitled to use phone earplugs, which are available at the library at Fitzwilliam. You can collect them from the tutorial office if you need, and I'm sure they'll have other kind of dispensing stations around the university. So please feel free to check there if you feel like you'd benefit from those with your exams. So there is another category of reasonable adjustments which are called enhanced reasonable adjustments. It's important to note that whilst most students can be accommodated under the standard adjustments, the list of which were on the previous slide, enhanced reasonable adjustments aim to address uniquely complex cases. So yeah, there's really a few main ones that I've kind of listed below. Stop the clock is probably one of the most common that we see. When I say common, I mean common for an enhanced reasonable adjustment. So this basically would mean that the student can take their exam within a larger window. However, they can basically stop the time of the exam, or stop the clock, and they can have a rest break for however long they need, and then the exam time would restart once they are ready to begin. So normally the student would begin their exam, but they'd be given a larger window across the day to complete the exam. So this could be 5 or 6 hours. However, they could not kind of go beyond that point, and things such as rest breaks would be kind of surrendered in favour of stop the clock. Bespoke exam timetables as well. So for students who might have exams on consecutive days, which might be an issue with existing conditions that they have, we can work with the exams team to basically ensure that you have a unique timetable which allow you to have adequate rest between your exams. It's important that you talk to the ADRC if you think that you might need an enhanced reasonable adjustment, as they can make that call. But once that is made available to the tutorial office on your SSD, then we can see that it is implemented for when you sit your exams. So students with reasonable adjustments will most likely be able to sit their exams within a central university reasonable adjustment venue. And these are just basically exam locations where students with reasonable adjustments can sit their exams. So it's kind of separate to the main cohort of students who don't have these adjustments, but it will ensure that when you are in the reasonable adjustment venue, that the invigilators are aware of your reasonable adjustments based on our previous application. You'll also be sat with students from your own college, other colleges, and who might be on the same subject who also have reasonable adjustments. So it's important to note that once you're in this venue, students might be leaving at different times. Obviously, they'll be asked to do so quietly, but hopefully this won't disturb you. The list of reasonable adjustment venues doesn't really change year to year, although this year the Sidgwick Avenue lecture block is used for low density. So this is 20 students or less. The other kind of university venues are considered low density, but their kind of capacity can vary from around 60 to 80. And the location used for specific exams can normally depend on its format, but basically the tutorial office gets sent a list each year, and basically when we process your exam access arrangement application, we select the location which fits with the reasonable adjustments that have been recommended. We do run exams in college, however these are reserved for the exceptional circumstances only due to limited capacity of rooms and of staff availability. And when it comes to exams such as Inspira and Moodle, it's probably beneficial sitting in a central university venue, as there will be technicians on hand to help with any problems. Whilst in college we do have basic training regarding these systems and platforms, you know, you're probably safer in the main venue just in case there's something we don't know how to answer. However, if there was a situation where we were struggling to figure something out, we could contact people at the main university to find a solution. So as previously discussed, the most common reasonable adjustments are extra time and rest breaks. And on the University of Cambridge exam student SharePoint, there is the reasonable adjustment calculator. And this basically allows you to put in your exam timings as confirmed on your exam confirmation forms, and will allow you to input your extra time and rest breaks based on your student support document or medical documentation. And this will allow you to basically calculate how much extra time and rest breaks you'll have in the exams. So we would recommend that students use this tool because it'll allow you to kind of calculate your timings before you go into the exam, and it's your responsibility to do so. The tutorial office doesn't have the capacity to sit and work out timings for every exam for a student who has reasonable adjustments, although we are happy to help if you are struggling to kind of you know, use a calculator or basically want to understand it better. So it's important to note as well that as of the 2024-25 academic year, rest breaks are now calculated on top of extra time. So this will give you slightly longer rest breaks if you're entitled to do so. Beforehand, the rest breaks were just calculated on top of the standard exam time, so you got slightly less. So yeah, so you get a slightly longer break this year, which is good for those students who you know, will use the rest breaks to the best of their ability, and you know, recharge before going in to complete the exam. So this slide is titled Communication is Key, and the communication in the title refers to the dialogue between a student and the tutorial office. So basically, when the tutorial office receives student support documents, some specific reasonable adjustments might need to be discussed with students directly. Probably the best example of this is the use of a PC or word processor. So a lot of students will have this on their SSD, as mentioned, because it's becoming increasingly common as a reasonable adjustment and due to the nature of exams. However, depending on the subject, you know, a student might not want to use a word processor. So for example, maths or linguistics are subjects where it's probably easier to handwrite the answers, because I imagine typing answers to maths questions and doing working out and that kind of thing probably is incredibly difficult. So if we looked at an SSD and saw that, we would potentially, you know, if we didn't have any clarification, we'd apply for a word processor, when actually it might be detrimental to the student's performance in an exam. So in such cases, we would reach out to a student to clarify that. We can use previous applications exam access arrangements to see what the student did if they are in second or third year, fourth year, or fifth or sixth if you're a medic. However, we normally send out an email in Michaelmas term of each academic year to basically confirm the exam arrangements, and any student who has the permission to use a PC or word processor will just confirm if they want to use that or not. So it's very important that you respond to that email if possible, otherwise we will just have to apply what we think and basically go from there. We can't amend exam access arrangement applications, however, venues can run out of capacity, so it's important that we can get it right first time. So this slide, kind of carrying on the theme from the last one, is titled "Organisation is Important." Organisation on behalf of the tutorial office, but also on the side of students as well. So we would strongly advise students who will need reasonable adjustments in their exams to basically speak to the ADRC, their tutors, or the tutorial office at the start of the academic year, in order to kind of get the ball rolling on ensuring that you have the arrangements in place that you'll need. And this is especially true if you have exams in Michaelmas or Lent term. So most subjects will just have the bulk of their exams in Easter. However, some subjects can have exams in Michaelmas and Lent, and a number of subjects will have mock exams that will run in college in January. So yeah, basically, us having the information that we need to ensure that you have the adjustments in place is beneficial both to us and to you. So this year, for example, the application window for exam access arrangements opened on the 25th of January and closes on the 21st of March. So it opens very early, and within this time the capacity of each adjustment venue will kind of decrease. So it basically opens so early just because of the sheer volume of applications which will need to be completed by tutorial officers across the university and will need to be processed by the exams team. And this includes kind of any amendments that the college might want to make, or that the exams team might require clarification on certain adjustments. So yeah, we should ideally have SSDs or medical letters before the start of Lent term, which will allow us to apply for Easter term exam arrangements as soon as possible. And obviously we want to kind of get you into the venue that will be most beneficial. So yeah, if you just kind of work with us and kind of talk to us anytime you need to, we'd be happy to discuss and ensure that kind of basically that we have everything in place for when your exams are. Speaking for myself and for the Student Services Department more broadly, we're here to help. We really want to see you succeed whilst you're at Cambridge, and we're on hand to answer any questions that you might have via email. You can come and see us. Fitz was founded upon the principle of helping academically gifted students from non-traditional socioeconomic backgrounds access higher education at Cambridge University. So ensuring that you have the adjustments in place for your exams is really just an extension of that founding principle. As having gone to university myself, exams are terrifying at the best of times, and we just want to make sure that you basically have everything you need to do the best you can, when you come to sit them. It's also worth noting as well that just even getting to Fitzwilliam is an incredible achievement that you should be proud of. I kind of looked at some of the league tables. Complete University has us as first, and the Times Higher Education has us as 5th in the world, which is incredible. So you should be incredibly proud of where you are, and just know that we want to see you succeed as you go through your academic career. So please reach out to us when we're more than happy to kind of talk for anything that you might want to. And the very last slide is basically just useful links that basically I use to kind of gather the information for this presentation. Obviously, this is kind of a crash course, so there kind of are kind of more nuanced areas of exam access arrangements and reasonable adjustments, SSDs, enhanced reasonable adjustments that we can get into if required on a case-by-case basis. But most students will probably find the information satisfactory for what they need it for. So the University of Cambridge SharePoint for the exams is probably the best place to go. This is where you can access the calculator, kind of information regarding adjustment venues. Later this term as well, the university team should hopefully make it possible that you can go and visit the reasonable adjustment venues, so you can kind of get a feel for the room before you sit your exam and make sure that you have the accessibility that you need. And then also below the links to the ADRC, basically it's just linked to the home page, and then also to kind of the exam arrangement page, which will kind of help you begin your journey to the to get an SSD if that's what you would like. yeah, and as said in the previous slide, just reach out to us if you have any questions at tutorial.office. Myself or my colleague will answer, and we can kind of look in anything we need to, and just ensure that you have the everything in place for your exams. So yeah, I hope you found this useful. It was kind of my first presentation of this kind, so I hope I've done well. But yeah, email or come and visit me in my office. Always kind of happy to discuss anything you need to. And yeah, good luck with your exams. I'm sure you do fine. Try not to worry about them too much. Exams aren't everything. And I think trust yourselves more than you would probably give yourselves credit for.